Happy Halloween. Leave now while you still can.
Leave now before Master finds you.
Who is that knocking at my door? Who is that knocking at my door? Who is that knocking at my door? Be gone with you.
Hello everyone, in today's video I'll be doing a double feature of two Hammer movies, The Curse of the Werewolf and The Phantom of the Opera. This will be my final Hammer movie review for the month of October over the Hammer series. I know there are a lot more Hammer horror movies. I won't have time to get through all of them at the moment. I'm only covering the basic Hammer movies that they rebooted the Universal Monsters family to keep it simple. Believe it or not, this is the only werewolf movie that Hammer ever did. No Hammer Wolfman meets Frankenstein or Dracula. Supposedly this was a loose adaptation of the novel Werewolf in Paris, written by Guy Endore. This was the first Wolfman movie to be shot in color. Prior to this, the only two Wolfman icons were the Universal's The Wolfman and Werewolf of London from 1935. But the 1950s did have I Was a Teenage Werewolf. That was more of a teen comedy, which is not really meant to be taken seriously. Before I dive into this review, I want to give a personal story on way before seeing this movie or having any knowledge about it. As a little kid watching An American Werewolf in London, there's a scene where David and Alex are in bed talking about werewolf movies. They mentioned this movie and Universal's Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman. Alex was confused thinking of The Curse of the Werewolf because her character was British. I guess she was more familiar with Hammer's Wolfman movie, not Universal's Lon Chaney Jr.'s version of the Wolfman. As a kid, I did not think nothing of the different Wolfman movies between Universal and Hammer at that time. Now when I watch that scene as an adult, now I get both references equally now. It surprised me how Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were not in this movie. It would have been cool to see Christopher Lee play the Wolfman, and maybe Cushing would have been the Claude Rains character. But because they were close in age, it would not have made sense for them to play father and son, like Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains in Universal Monsters' 1941's The Wolfman movie. Maybe they could have played brothers. Christopher Lee would have beaten Lon Chaney Jr. and Bela Lugosi, the only actors to have played Universal Monsters' iconic characters, the Frankenstein Monster, Dracula, the Mummy, and the Wolfman. Despite their big success with Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Mummy, my guess is maybe they were not available or Hammer Studio really wanted Oliver Reed for the role, but it still worked out very well with all the actors in this movie without Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Having said this, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing could not commit to all Hammer horror movie projects. Not to get off topic, one thing Hammer did not remake was Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Invisible Man. I guess maybe because Creature from the Black Lagoon was very recent by Universal at the time, maybe Hammer decided not to touch or try to remake The Gill Man, maybe for the best. Because that is a great movie that does not deserve a remake, despite, well, Guillermo del Toro's Shape of Water remake was a semi-remake and more of a love letter tribute to The Gill Man. But again, that's a different story. When I first saw this movie back in 2015, I did not like this movie. But rewatching it for this video, it grew on me on the second time, and I enjoyed it a little bit more on another viewing than I did the first time. It's weird that I haven't seen this movie since 2015, yet it's odd that I've not seen this in a long time. There were parts that I remember in this movie that stood out to me, and other parts it's been a long time that I didn't remember. For example, I remember this beggar wanderer character goes to a castle, crashing a wedding, begging for food and wine. The rich are assholes and treat him poorly. The bride who married the rich man was the only one who showed compassion and empathy for the beggar. He's locked up in a dungeon for years and he's forgotten. His only contact that he had was that he saw was a jailer and his mute daughter. As time went on, the father died and she grew up. The headmaster of the housewife dies and he's a recluse, being heartbroken, losing the love of his life. The mute servant girl was thrown into the dungeon after defending herself against the headmaster of the house. He was trying to take advantage of her and was raped by the beggar in the dungeon. She escaped and is found by an artist and his maid Teresa, who take good care of her. She's very well treated by Teresa, despite that she's still in severe shell shock from being raped. Because she can't speak, we never know what her real name is. Her baby was almost born around Christmas time, and this causes Teresa some concern despite being happy to see a newborn baby. But she's worried about, with this baby being born almost around Christmas due to the lupine curse. From doing research on what this means, apparently there are European countries that do believe that when a child is born around Christmas time, the same time as Jesus Christ, they believe that a curse on that child born on Christmas as punishment for blasphemy. Again, I can't really say or don't know if I believe in this, but it was interesting to read about this. When Leon is born, his mother dies. It's very sad to see that the mom died at childbirth and not see her child grow up. She only saw her baby for a split second before dying. The actress who played the mute servant was played by Yvonne Romain. She was a very beautiful woman, probably one of the most beautiful Hammer horror actresses ever I've seen in these movies. Also, I remember the nice visual shots of the Wolfman. Those shots were cool. The look of the Wolfman is awesome and cool in this movie. Another reason why I did not like this movie at the time was that there was not enough Wolfman in this movie. But rewatching on a second viewing, I've learned to get past that and appreciate the characters and the story. I didn't think I'd get sucked into the story, analyze these characters like I do now when I'm rewatching this movie. In my Wolfman video, I mentioned that originally Universal wanted to go the psychological route, that he was never the Wolfman, that it was all in his head. They used that a little bit in this movie, but Leon was still a werewolf. An unknown monster kills a farmer's sheep, and I think it was a werewolf or some other kind of other animal. Pepe the Night Watcher shoots a dog thinking that the dog was the one responsible, but little did he know that dog was the farmer's sheepdog, a little misunderstanding. The uncle thinks Leon is responsible and changes his bedroom window with bars to prevent him from killing and protect his nephew from being taken away from him. Oliver Reed does a good job as Leon. Just like Lawrence Talbot, he's misunderstood, a tragic character who did not want to become a werewolf, but he had no choice. All Leon was a happy, normal life and wanted someone to love him. I like the romance between him and Christina. I'm glad they changed the name and did not call him Lawrence Talbot, despite Hammer at this point in time got the okay permission to remake their Universal classic monsters. But I guess Hammer thought, nah, let's make our own, Wolfman version. Let's create new character names rather than copying the original character names. Christina was a likable character, soft, sweet, gentle, and loved Leon. You feel bad for how her father was controlling, domineering, and does not want to marry Leon, and he wanted her to marry Jose Gomez because he's a rich man. But honestly, Jose Gomez was a jerk and an asshole and a bully to Leon, and then again, so was Christina's father. Just when Leon was about to lose control, rage, and turn to the Wolfman, Christina calms Leon down because, again, love prevented Leon turning to the Wolfman, similar how when Betty calms down the Hulk. In Universal's Wolfman, Gwen's father was a nice man and a gentleman to Lawrence Talbot. Her fiancé Frank was a little bit rude and jealous of Lawrence Talbot at first, but learned to be nice, kind, and gentle to Lawrence Talbot. I like the scene where the uncle is talking to the priest that baptized Leon. He explains to him on the werewolf curse. Just like when Van Helsing explains his knowledge on vampires. I'm not going to repeat or recite what the priest said. Go watch it. And I'm going to try my best to explain how I interpret his advice and knowledge on the werewolf curse. Unlike Lon Chaney Jr.'s The Wolfman, where Lawrence Talbot was cursed and bitten by a werewolf, this was more on the poor soul curse being passed down to Leon, and that love and warmth can only cure his werewolf curse. My guess is what I'm getting out of this. Leon's mother was raped by a man who ended up dying of a poor soul, and he was treated by society, and now Leon is cursed when his mother was raped, and her soul was weakened. The full moon is when the wolf is at his strongest, which does not surprise me. Leon finds out as an adult from his uncle and Aunt Teresa and the priest that baptized that he was cursed for the werewolf. Like anyone who does not take the news, then again, who wouldn't? He didn't take it very well. The ending is great, sad and tragic. I will say this concept is a little bit interesting, a little bit different from what I'm used to with werewolf movies. The main character is not bitten by a werewolf, he was born with a curse. It's not one of my favorite werewolf movies, but it's a movie I've learned to respect on a second viewing, and to see how it had some unique good change-up ideas. Now on a Phantom of the Opera from 1962, and in case you noticed, I went from day for night in this video, just like Ed Wood, ha! This will be the last Hammer movie I will dive into, the last of the Universal monster family that Hammer rebooted, Eric from Phantom of the Opera. Like I said, I only focused on what Hammer rebooted of the Universal monsters. In the near future, I'd like to check out other Hammer horror movies and review them on my YouTube channel at some point. This is a remake of Universal's Phantom of the Opera, both the 1925 Lon Chaney Sr., despite that version is in the public domain, and the 1943 Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera. In my opinion, the 1925 version is the best one. Claude Rains' version, well, despite being a great talented actor, Claude Rains was, but his performance to me as the Phantom's arrogant, forgetful. I've only seen that version of the Phantom of the Opera twice. I never found that version rewatchable material. Christopher Lee was originally offered the role of Phantom. That could have been cool and awesome. I also read Cary Grant was considered for the role of the Phantom because he was interested in doing a horror movie. But because of rewrites of the character, Hammer thought the violent scenes would ruin Cary Grant's image. After too many rewrites, Cary Grant turned down Hammer. As interesting as that could have been, but I'm not sure if I could see Cary Grant in this role, and he would have been miscast in this part. Lee would have been a more suitable choice for the role of the Phantom. The actor who played the Phantom, played by Herbert Holmes, does a fantastic job. Again, I have no idea who Herbert Holmes is as an actor. This is my first viewing of him as an actor. I don't know what other films he's done. Correction, I've seen him around before. He was in The Dead Zone as the medical doctor, so my mistake. From reading about him, I read that his trademark as an actor was he played gangster, bad guys, and was known for the Pink Panther movies for a little comedy. The Phantom is not the villain, he's misunderstood. He was tricked by a greedy businessman jerk who stole his music and not give him any credit for it. He was protective of Christine, making sure that she did not fall into the same trap as he did with Lord Ambrose. Unlike most Phantom of the Opera movies, there's a love triangle. In this movie, he wants to teach and give Christine singing lessons and make sure that she was on her way to stardom as an opera singer. Known because of his serious conditions, third-degree burns, he will die, only time will tell. His last request was to help Christine as best as possible. With no love triangle in this movie, still is a love story only between Christine and Hunter. It's also a revenge thriller when you think about it. The makeup effect, while it's no Lon Chaney Sr., it's a little bit of an upgrade compared to Claude Rains' Phantom. I like the Phantom's underground sewer lair. His mute hunchback sideman is loyal to him and helps him after his injuries. He is a good caregiver for Petrie. The opera set designs are very good. In most Phantom of the Opera movies in the book, it takes place in Paris. Instead, this movie takes place in London. Big change up. When I read about this movie, it surprised me how this was not a success when it first came out at the time. This is one of Terence Fisher's non-successful Hammer movies. Hammer didn't let him direct another film for the studio in 2 years after this movie's failure. Michael Gove plays Lord Ambrose d'Arcy. As I said in my Horror of Dracula video, you all might recognize him as Alfred in the Tim Burton / Joel Schumacher Batman movies. His character in this movie is a real scumbucket piece of shit. This guy's a prick. When he takes Christine out to dinner, he wanted to give her singing lesson at his apartment, but she knows what that means. He was just using that as an excuse to have sex with her. Hunter, a gentleman, saves her, prevents her from going to his apartment and take advantage of her. He's the real bad guy in this movie. As I said before, Ambrose stole Professor Petrie's music score and did not give any credit for his artwork. This makes Petrie mad, angry, furious. Petrie breaks into the publishing office so he can collect his musical score, but when he sets the office on fire, the fire burns his musical score. He escapes and ends up in the sewer, which explains everything. The part towards the end, when Ambrose runs into Petrie, he takes his mask off in front of him and scares him away. Ambrose deserved that. It's a sense of relief for the Phantom knowing that he will never work at the Opera House again because of his bad reputation. I like the character Harry Hunter. He's a gentleman, charming, very compassionate man. He cares for Christine and makes sure that her career is going to go well. He's heroic for saving Christine, then he finds out the truth about Petrie, realizes that he's not a bad guy. He decides to let him help Christine with her singing career. Seeing how he's misunderstood, and he realizes that Petrie was not a bad guy at all whatsoever. He was played by Edward D. Souza, who was in Kiss of the Vampire, another Hammer horror movie. He was also in a James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me. Heather Sears plays Christine Charles, a beautiful, talented opera singer looking to be a star and have her big breakout. She replaces an opera singer star who left after seeing a dead body hanging during one of her opera performances. Heather Sears also does a great job in this movie. She's lovable, sympathetic. You root for her to go far in her career as an opera singer. When she first meets the Phantom, she's scared, intimidated, but when she hears his story, she feels better and more confident when she's given singing lessons by him. Again, I never heard of this actress until seeing this movie. Despite being in this movie, Heather Sears was mostly known for her career on stage and doing British TV shows. Sadly, she's no longer with us. She passed away on January 3rd, 1994 from cancer. She was only 58 at the time of her passing. Thorley Waters, playing Latimer Ambrose's assistant. Despite working for Ambrose, he wasn't a bad person. He was just working for the wrong guy. Michael Ripper's in this movie. He plays a cabbie, not a big part. His part is small. Again, Hammer recycled another one of their actors from previous Hammer movies. Patrick Troughton, who I mentioned was in the Omen and other Hammer movies like Scars of Dracula and Frankenstein the Monster from Hell. He plays a rat catcher. Just like the Omen, he dies in another brutal way. He gets stabbed in the eye by the Phantom. The ending is great. It's sad, tragic, and perfect. Christina's success at the opera. She is saved by Petrie from almost dying. He sacrificed himself so she could live. Petrie died not only with a legacy of his music work, but also teaching Christine how to be a great future legend opera singer. In the 1943 Phantom of the Opera with Claude Rains, the story is told straightforward, and this was told in a flashback, which in my opinion was done much better. This movie is basically a remake of the Universal Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera. In my opinion, this is way better than Claude Rains for once. I give credit to Hammer on this movie. Coming from someone who loves the Universal monsters, but like anything else, we all have our limits. But I will say though, out of all the Phantom of the Opera remakes, this one is without a doubt and definitely one of the best and good and better Phantom of the Opera remakes. Maybe my second favorite Phantom of the Opera movie, possibly. In the future, I will do a review of Lon Chaney Sr.'s Phantom of the Opera for a special occasion. That wraps up Hammer movie reviews. Tomorrow we dive into George Romero's Zombie Dead series. See you soon.